A journey into the underground with Adam X. Sonic Room Podcast. Hi, this is Adam X, and on today's episode, I have two of Belgium's best techno producers of all time, Marco Solan, aka Outlander, and CJ Bolland. These guys I looked up to immensely when I was coming up in techno in the early 1990s. They produced some of the best records of all time. I went to Antwerp, Belgium, and sat down with both of them in CJ's studio and had an amazing in-depth conversation with both of them. I was told many interesting things about their histories which I did not know about. I'm here to unfold these conversations with you. Sit back, listen, and enjoy. Thank you guys for hanging out, just having fun with the boys. We decided to do this as improv, and yeah, man, you know, coming up in Brooklyn when I first got into techno in 1990, I don't know, it was these dark records from Belgium that really sparked my interest. I always thought, wow, Belgium must be a really dark country. These records are kind of dark. What's going on here? Like, raining every day, big churches. That's how I envisioned it. I never traveled to Europe.
Well, that's exactly what it is. If you haven't seen sunshine for 10 years, you get a bit darker. Yeah. And Marcus was there way before me. He was writing stuff that I was growing up with and getting into, and was also inspiring me to become involved. So yeah, he was the proper pioneer.
Yeah, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, we know that, but
Yeah.
Did anybody know what they were doing when they first started? I just thought it was me. I don't know, you know? Like, when I first got into it in 1990, my brother would be like, oh, 808, 909. I'm like, what the fuck is that? You know, like, I didn't even know I didn't even know that the music that I liked was electronic music. I always liked Kraftwerk and all this stuff before, but I never thought about music on terms of electronic and acoustic, you know? And so when I first started working in the shop, I think really in this part in 1990, hearing your guys' records and hearing some of the stuff from Detroit just changed my life. It was just like, I never heard music like this before. It was just something completely different than any other music I've heard before, whether it was electronic, whether it was Black Sabbath, which I was into. There was just something futuristic that just pulled me into music and actually pushed me away from writing graffiti. And it was definitely, especially we were talking before we started recording about the project and like Do That Dance and this era, the space opera, the Andropolis, and these records from this period were just really crucial records in my life and sparking my interest further into this music and starting to buy vinyl and stuff. And you're my age and you were making these records already. Like, we were like 18 years old when you made these first records, like Pulse Cat Voice. And,
yeah, 70 years younger even.
But you had to be younger to even get that good. I mean, you must have been making music for years prior, right?
Thank you, but that good is, well, almost an overstatement, seeing as we also really had no clue what we were doing, except for the fact that I knew from a very early age that I had this, I don't know, I like these electronic sounds.
Enthusiasm.
From Jean-Michel Jarre and Kraftwerk and all those guys and Klaus Schulze and everything that was happening before, and the fact that when I was a young teenager, or actually aged 9, 10, even before I was a teenager, we had a bar. And my mum was DJing in the bar, and she would play for the crowd. She would play a disco because that's what everybody was into, but she would also play some electro. She'd play some funk, and she'd play some soul, and she'd play a bit of everything. And my bedroom was right above. So I'd be going to bed with this stuff, and I got to get up for school the next day. I'm hearing stuff, and I'm like, I hear this little fucking thing going on. I'm like, what's that? I'm going to run downstairs in my pajamas. Mum, what's that? Oh, it's this tune, Liaison Dangereuse, Los Niños del Parque. I'm like, this is really cool. And she go, oh, well, there you go, son, have the record and things. And then I was just, so I knew I liked this sound. And for me, mostly the reason I started even becoming a producer, well, firstly for my own pleasure because I wanted to hear, but also there was a lot of records that I was hearing when I was very young. Also, when I went out clubbing for the first time, like 13, 14, we had a nightclub at home, so my mum was quite lenient, and I have a really young aunt who was like only 4 years older than me. She'd be 17, I'd be like 13, and my mum would go, all right, Auntie Louise is gone with you guys can go out. So I would be allowed to go to nightclubs, and I was like, wow. But she was hanging out with a new wave, cold wave guy as well, so we were going.
That's amazing. You said Liaison Dangereuse, so she was fucking.
Well, there you go. There you go. But we'd end up in these clubs where there'd be like half of it would be like punk rock and stuff and all cool stuff as well. That I was like, wow, this is crazy stuff. And then suddenly be Front and Front 242 and Neon Judgment and all that kind of stuff. The Clinic and Absolute Body Control and all that stuff that we grew up with. I mean, this is even way before New Beat.
Do you know that's who I'm staying with while I'm here? Is Eric from Absolute Body Control?
Yeah.
It's one of my dear friends. And I was just with Dirk Evan's sister earlier.
Well, legends. I mean, they know that we. I'm
on both sides of Belgium here.
Well, there you go. But these are my true heroes. These are the people I actually only met Derek Evans the first time a couple of years ago, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I went up to him like he was like, you know, Tom Cruise. You know, I was like, oh my God, Derek Evans, and he was like, yeah, what's up? And I was like, oh man, I got this kind of level of like starstruckness because that meant so much to me back in the day.
You should just, do you ever check out Eric Van Bontagam, the one who makes the music for Absolute?
Yeah.
So he does Monolith and Sono.
We chat.
He makes amazing stuff. We
chat on the socials. Now we're all like old geezers and stuff. We're like, yeah. But these guys meant everything to me. This is like absolutely the reason I was into it. But my biggest problem was, this is obviously way before internet and anything else, we would hear tunes. I'd go to these crazy clubs, these really dark underground clubs in Antwerp as a kid, shy and like sitting in the back, but just listening to the music, taking it all in, going, wow, this is crazy, this is insane, crazy stuff. But I want to buy it. Where can I buy it? What's it even called? I mean, you can't get all of it. And the only thing I could do was ask the DJ, what was this and what was this one? And he'd be so annoyed with me after like, this is 18th time you've come and asked me for it. Now, bugger off, you little kid. And he'd stop telling me. That's the reason I started writing stuff, was because I couldn't find it. I didn't know what to call it in the record store. And the record store, I mean, even if you went to the record store and you said, it's this kind of music, it's like you go, well, we don't really sell that kind of music. We sell Michael Jackson and we sell Madonna. We don't know what you're asking for. So I started making it at home. And that's how I ended up meeting Renat, is because I actually copied certain tunes just so I could listen to them, because I had them only in my memory. And the first one that Renat picked up on was, I did a space opera song, which was, I think, Cisco Ferreira and Patrick de Grave, who, as the Mackenzie, was also doing tunes back then. And I did a version of it, and I was, every Sunday afternoon, I was literally a kid, I'd go to this local pirate radio station that reached about 3 blocks, and it had about a couple of hundred listeners or something, but it was really cool, and it was like, and we'd play these songs sort of halfway between his usual DJ stuff. He'd all the American imported bought and like Frankie Bones and stuff that he was playing, and he was like, and now this kid's done this Belgian kid's done this, and the listeners could call up and ask us, how did you do it? And it'd always be the same answer. Yeah, we bought an 808 and now we've got a 303 as well. We've got an MS-20, and we would like technically explain how we made these tunes and this and that. And somebody had recorded this on a cassette tape, and Renat somehow got to hear about it and heard this song, and he called. I don't know how he even found me back then, but he did.
Yeah, he did.
And my mum and dad got a phone call. I was still living at home, obviously, saying, who's this kid? Bring him into the studio. And then I went to the studio. My mum and dad drove me there. I was too young to drive. You got to be 18 in Europe, not 16 like in America.
Yeah.
And he just dropped me off in the studio, and who was there? Cisco Ferreira. And I was like, what the? And then he's just opened these doors. It was like opening this like palace doors, like big doors up, and all this equipment that I could have only dreamed of. Just like, what the emulator, Moog, all this gear. I was like, wow. And I just said, leave me in, Mum and Dad. I'll see you next week. And I just said that. We'd fall out.
And so,
well, the same story.
Oh, yeah.
Renat was asking for me after he chilled out. After months, I go to Ghent. I said, hi, here, you know how these machines work? I said, yeah, sure. I said, well, this is Joey Beltram. Well, make something. And I stayed there also for 5 days before I came back to Antwerp.
You can't.
But the thing is that you already had a career. You already were having the records on Antwerp Subway with Indie, and you already did the Liaisons D record with the Heat Chilled Out, which is one of the, in my opinion, is probably one of the best records of all time. This record is just genius. So by the time you came on to R&S and you did Vamp, you already had that was a big record in that time period for underground techno.
Yeah.
So you weren't still wet behind the ears like the CJ was, right? You know, you were already working with a major label with Antwerp Subway, which was probably one of the biggest labels in Belgium of all time.
And you were
PIS.
No, it was.
Yeah,
It really was.
And so you were experienced. You're also older by, you know, me and CJ are pretty much the same age.
Yeah, well,
same
like
range.
30 or 40 years older than us.
A couple of weekends, yes.
So I would think you came to R&S with the experience that other people didn't. You know, I mean, Cisco was around definitely a few years earlier. And I mean,
Cisco had already worked with Arthur Baker then.
Oh, did he? I didn't know that.
He was in the States for a while, and he was in the studio with some of those early hip hop.
I'm gonna have to ask him that. So let's not give because
he's told me that. He's told me that. If he made that shit up, I want to know about it because he's been shown.
But Cisco was cutting edge, man. He was kind of the first guy in Europe to do this fucking Detroit techno thing before anybody else was doing it, other than maybe Mark Archer and the Nexus 21. Beat, right? So, or the Bizarre Inc. guys. They were 89. Actually, Cisco, I think, goes even before. Like
he does go before
87, 88 almost, probably around there.
And I remember Renat introduced me to Cisco, and he actually called him the Walking 909. And I'd only just discovered what a 909 was. And he said, this guy, and literally, as you know, well, the patterns he programmed on that stuff like then, that was like, would have like, you know, it's probably inspired Jeff Mills even.
So when you did these records, the early records, which I told you in the past, were some of my favorites, the Pulse Cat Voice. This is just some futurism, dark. It was a weird record that wasn't really big because I had the shop, and it was one of the R&S records that didn't really sell a lot. And I always saw copies around back then. Yeah. But to me, this is one of the most brilliant R&S records. It's so out there, and so like you're on a spaceship, Space Odyssey 2001 or Space Odyssey 1990, I guess, right? And then of course the Do That Dance, but Look Into My Eyes, right? To me, it's just like, as I said before, I think this is a masterpiece. The way the bass line is written, and it's just a beautiful, deep, mental track. Did you have an engineer on these tracks, or you just engineered them on your own?
Oh, no. Well, I'm glad you even used the word engineering. We were like using mixers for the first time, mixing desks and stuff like that. We didn't even, there were compressors in the studio. We didn't even know what they were for. They were just like there, and that was like, this doesn't make any sound. We won't use that then.
So there was no engineer in the studios at this point. Nobody that had really. I mean, was Cisco well versed? Did he engineer any records for you guys or anything?
Cisco Ferreira and David Morley, but we didn't tend to finish those things together. We would spend some time like jamming together, but whoever was there was doing whatever they were doing.
We tweaked a little bit.
And I know for a fact, pretty much the whole first half of the 90s, and probably even part of the second half of the 90s, I never compressed anything. It was just literally, winging it. Just, this seems to sound good. That must be good then.
Mixing desk.
I mean, it's also the difference, a main difference. I mean, obviously, that's actually the thing that's two things I'm trying to say at once. But in the 80s, music sounded really good in its 80s way. In the 90s, a lot of the music doesn't sound as good as the 80s because a lot of it was home engineered and by musicians that didn't really know what they were doing before there was a bunch of software that kind of almost does it for you, or with a bunch of presets.
I was there at my early production, so
you know how it goes. You know how it goes, or how it went. So we were really just winging it, and sometimes when I listen back to that stuff, I think, imagine if I did that now, I could make that sound so much better. And then you think, it's got that feel that if I tried to do that now, I'd probably ruin it.
How did you guys designate studio time in R&S Studios? How did that work out? Where you say you're going in one day,
everybody that want to come out,
it sounds like everybody was like it was a free fall. But then how do you get music?
It pretty much was. But what happened also was we just kind of hung out together, and we just would start like jamming along. everybody's sort of involved in somebody else's track in one way or another. Mark is involved in Horsepower. I'm involved in David Morley's like Spectrum Brazil, or in any kind of way or other. Everybody's like Joey Beltram's first album with Energy Flash, not Energy Flash. Energy Flash he'd already written. He did that in the States. But all the other tracks on there, it's my 303 line. I programmed the 303 line. We didn't even credit each other. We didn't even care. Just like we were just all hanging around. Per Martinson's using the sound that I made the day before on the Prophet 500.
That's what made the music really great with what you guys were doing, was
that's what gave R&S.
That's why it was such a funky vibe.
We were all the same machines. We were all using the same machines that gave that sound.
And Renat was really good at putting people together. You know, he'd say like, "Hey, CJ, I'm bringing over a guy from London. You got to meet him. Blah blah blah. You guys hang out. Just go and hang out in the club."
So, do you have all the master tapes and stuff that never was released? Because I get there must be vaults of. I mean, there must have been so much great music that never came out.
Well, this is a controversial story that I'm guessing must be true, or we got lied to. But apparently, they all went up in a fire. But we never saw any of those. There was a lot of recordings of a lot of unreleased stuff that Renat says that I'm afraid they're gone.
And then there's
they were never released afterwards.
Right.
So
and then people didn't really do DAT machine. You know, you needed 2 DAT machines.
Well, we started even before DAT machines. We were on tape.
Oh, you guys were doing the Ampex reel to reel.
Yeah, we had a read. Yeah. I mean, we had a DAT machine once. DAT machine.
Yeah, because DAT machine was like 91. No, was that 90? But
I think we started using DATs 92 or something around then.
Yeah.
So wow, the tapes are gone. That's sad.
Yeah,
you got to think how much great music was probably made in these.
Well, a lot of crap probably as well.
No, sometimes when you go back to your old tracks and you think they're not good, because I've done this and I'm like, that's actually pretty fucking good. Why did I never put that out?
Not good enough.
You never had these moments with your stuff?
No, I haven't. Well, I have it both ways. Sometimes I think that, and other times I think, thank God that never got released. And shit, why did that ever get released? But it was also a different time. It was different technology. Again, we were young. It's all.
So
exploring also. It's all things that didn't exist yet.
Yeah,
so it's just exploring.
So Marcos, tell us a little bit about the new beat era, because I haven't interviewed anybody that's from that part, and there's a lot of people. There's been a new beat revival. Not so many people making it, but people playing it at parties. I went to a nice party like just a little over a week ago where they were playing new beat and like this kind of old German EBM stuff from like 1990, like New Zone and Boy Records and stuff like that. And so, what was this scene like? And you were making some of the better underground records in that scene because it was also this commercial side, right?
Now I feel like Joe Biden. About it, man.
I'll remember for you. Well, but his tunes, as you mentioned, like Leon D and stuff like that, and Indie and stuff like that.
That was the very first one.
When did you first start making electronic music? When did you get into it?
Oh, early 80s. I had already my first computer was a Commodore 64. I had to do.
Did you make music with that?
Yeah, I had the Pro 16 sequencer. From the very early few days.
Even we don't understand what he's talking about.
On a real floppy disk.
He had the mainframe computer with green text on it.
Atari. But okay, I had 2 keyboards, a drum machine, and a computer. But I never thought I would make a record. That was, I'm a bit show.
Far away from your bed show. That's a Belgian expression.
No, it's like move to far reached, It's never expected.
And so what is your actual first record that you put out on vinyl? What year was that?
That's Virgin in the Sky.
Yeah, Indie.
Oh, so it is.
And it was, I just wanted to see a real studio. So the DJ in Prestige arranged the meeting with...
Mark Rolf.
Mark Rolf with Maurice Engelo. I said, real studio. And during that visit, we made the first track.
And this record got a lot of play in Belgium at this time. Right? This was one of the bigger records.
I bought that record.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing track, actually. It's a really good one. It's one of the best Snoopy records.
We had also a very popular radio show with Sylvanes, Liaison Dangereuse, and they were also pushing it. And
And were you playing live? Did you go out and play like Boccaccio and
live
up in Belgium?
No, we didn't.
Or mimic it in phase?
No, live at those days. The technology was
And what was it like? You know, one thing that people don't realize with the music back then was that it was very regional, right? Like Belgium. This is the sound of Belgium. It didn't really carry over in many places. Like, you know, it was not a, you had to be into some really obscure stuff to find this music in New York or, you know, in other places. Maybe in Germany a little bit it bled over, but did you ever find yourself at this time period of going to Germany to a club that plays this music, or in Paris or somewhere outside of Belgium? That
it was fairly unusual then to travel to do DJ sets or anything like that. That was all unheard of then.
So
that was later. That was later on. But
with indie.
Back in the 80s.
Yeah.
So that would have been quite special then to do that, because it wasn't like nowadays when every club has like a lineup from everybody all over the world in the same night. Everybody gets another. Most clubs would be one DJ from midnight till like 5 or 6 in the morning, and at 6 in the morning somebody would take over till like noon. That was the one thing we had in Belgium. We didn't have any curfews. Clubs would just go on. There was no closing times. There was no regulations.
And so if
when the crowd leaves, then they close.
When everybody's fucked
so
up.
what was the average if let's say Boccaccio is the famous club that everybody knows, right, from that period, it would open at like 10 o'clock on a Saturday night?
No, it would open like 10 o'clock on a Friday night, and it would close Monday afternoon 3 or 4 o'clock.
And it was always full,
like Bear Guy.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh shit, I didn't know.
But it would change styles, because Friday night it would be more commercial music. It would have been more pop music. Saturday night it would go into like, I don't know, what was it? I don't even know. I never went on a Saturday, to be honest, because it started getting really good Sunday afternoon.
Sunday, yeah.
And then Sunday afternoon till Monday afternoon. Sunday night was insane.
But somebody would be playing literally at 3 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon now.
All day, all night.
Wow.
Like Berghain does now, which is normal. But
and how many people would go to this club? 1,000 people?
I think if it was at full capacity at one time, maybe 1,800 people, 2,000, something like that. But in rotation on the weekend, a couple of thousand.
So once this new beat scene died, because it didn't last very long, because it got really commercial and cheesy, right? Pretty much, and that's why it was kind of killed off. Is that with the fashion and
slow as well. It was too slow to last for too long. It was nice.
It was a transition from.
I loved it for a while and then got bored with it, and then I picked up on Chicago House and Acid House and Detroit Techno, and I was like, this is like pretty much where I want to go next.
And did Boccaccio at that point stop playing? Like it's known as this famous new beat club, but then it became a techno club, or did the techno go somewhere else?
We didn't even call it techno back then. It was they called it house music here for some reason,
right?
But what we called house had nothing to do with Chicago House. What they called in Belgium house music, as they say here, was actually quite hard driven. Yeah, it was quite hard driven, very industrial.
Everything with the drum machine was.
Would that be considered like what you were doing on R&S at that point? You think?
I was something. I was kind of a blend in between, because I was very quickly influenced by everything that was coming out of America, everything that was coming out of the UK, and I was really not following any particular styles. I was just like blurred, just doing whatever felt good.
Well, I mean, the term techno really didn't come out anyway till those Detroit techno comps came out on 10 records, right? So before it was always kind of called house up until
exactly
late 89. But there's a term that was frequently used a bit after new beat, hard beat. Like we would see this name on records. Was this a name that actually was used by everybody, or just certain?
I think it was just like, let's try and pick up, and that was more like, let's try and create the next.
It seemed like Ant was
new beat kind of just organically happened, and Heartbeat was like, let's try and we got to top ourselves from last time. Let's try and do something else, and that didn't really.
It seemed like Ant with Subway was kind of naming these genres a little bit to sell the compilations, right? I mean, I think that was kind of also.
I don't think. I mean, even if new beat was something now, I think most people around the world will vaguely have heard about Heartbeat. Who's ever heard of that? That never. And
so in the beginning of this era, when you were on R&S Space Opera 3001 and this early 1990 period of like, we were talking about Mackenzie records earlier and stuff like Freak Out and records, Chicago Trip and stuff like this, these were considered house records here.
Well, because there was no real terminology.
Because we were already calling it techno in New York at this point when the records came out.
I think I was as well. I think, but that already wasn't considered techno anymore, because by that time I'd heard Sonic EP and stuff like that. I'd heard Underground Resistance, and I was like, hang on. What are you guys still dancing on your clubs for 105 BPM? I think I'm going to do this shit now.
Yeah, so my brother also did call it techno, which was a big hit here in Belgium, and that was 89, right? So and they did the cover version. Cisco and Renat did. So yeah, then because it was always these like in New York when we were getting all this Belgian stuff in, they tried to call the style schizo when it was like getting a little ravey, but this was all like it was Subway marketing or something. You know, it wasn't really coming from R&S.
I've never even heard that word, schizo.
Yeah. Schizo was another term that they were using on like some of the early rave records on Dance Opera, on Beatbox and stuff at that point.
Okay.
Never even heard of it.
I think there was a lot of different things going on in Belgium and different little scenes of trying to.
But we weren't connected with any internet or anything, so we weren't exchanging any. It was just like, we'll call it that, you call it that, whatever. So yeah,
because I actually remember talking to Renat about this stuff, like in probably early '91, and he's like, "I don't know these Belgian labels." I'm like, "How do you not know this? We're selling tons of these records. You don't know this, and you're from Belgium, and you don't know these records." He's like, "No, be like stuff on like Target Records and stuff from back in the day, or Diki that did like."
Oh, but he was very on a mission.
Yeah. So he was
I'm going my way.
Yeah.
I don't care about where we going this way.
But in New York, it would be like if you knew New Groove, you knew Fourth Floor, you knew Strictly Rhythm, everybody knew all these labels. But here it just seemed like everything was kind of separated. But I guess it's also because of the country of Belgium, right? It's, you got the French, you got the Flemish side. There was probably not a lot of interaction between different things, right?
I mean, between the artists, maybe there was, because I would meet all the guys in the record shop, and I know everybody was, and we'd hang out and stuff like that.
That was the meeting point.
But also, don't forget, we were signed to record deals back then. That we were stuck to one label, so we couldn't just go and mess around with any other guys, because we were signed to, I was signed to R&S, Mike was signed to R&S, he's signed to that label, he's signed to that label, he's that label, or whatever.
No, were you signed where you couldn't do an anonymous, not anonymous project, but like a different alias on a different label?
We had exclusive deals. We weren't supposed to do anything else anyway, ever. Not even on the moon, I think it said in the contract, didn't it? Something like or on other heavenly bodies.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The planet Earth and the solar system or something like that.
That wasn't very common back then, because usually you had your artist project, if you did like Outlander, then you maybe couldn't sign to another label, but you could do another project for another label. I mean, that's pretty much it.
We couldn't do that then. We weren't supposed to.
So now we're getting a bit later into the 90s, right? And then you guys both had these huge records. You did the Vamp record, which is probably one of the biggest rave records of all time. And you did Horsepower, which is one of the biggest rave records of all time from that period, along with Dominator, T99. These were the big records of the era. And so now you started to have this like worldwide success. Were you traveling a lot back in that time period for these records?
Well, I was traveling around Europe at first, which was already like amazing and full on. And also, it was a little weird at the beginning, because I'll just rewind a little bit. I remember there was a record meeting there. I think it was at Hessel's shop, Music Man.
Yeah.
Also had the label Music
Yes, I remember.
Which now later became News and stuff like that. Yeah. And he had this record store, and we had an in-store meeting. It was with Joey Beltram, me, I think Per Martinson. Surely you must have been there as well. It's a long way back. But what I remember specifically of that day was, and the reason I'll tell you why I'm telling you this, is that Joey got all of the attention. And we were like, fuck, why is he getting all, we did good records as well. Why is he getting all the attention? And
Energy Flash.
Well, yeah.
The best record.
Fair enough.
One of them.
A little bit. We did a couple of good tunes as well. And we were like, yeah, he deserves a lot of credit for that. But is it because he's American because of that? And then I was talking to some other kids that were like, I know you and what you did. Oh, you did that, you did that. Oh, you did that and that and that. And then I realized we were working under a bunch of different pseudonyms. We were called Sonic Solution, Space Opera, Digital Vamp, The Project, whatever. You know what I mean? Pulse, Rave Signal. And Joey was Joey Beltram. Joey Beltram.
Yeah, no, but he did Mental Mayhem, Joey's Riot, right? When my brother did the Mental
Side. So he called himself Mental Mayhem, but he
did Open Mind, and then he had Code 6. He also had a lot of different projects at that time. Okay. I think the Belgium thing came more after R&S, and then
it felt like that he'd done a couple of records in a row as Joey Beltram, and that was recognized. And I hadn't released anyone under one same name. It was all pseudonyms.
It's also the grass is greener on the other side, so the Europeans see this American guy.
Yeah, when I was
right?
in America and I saw with Joe.
And the scene was too small in America at that point, so you guys weren't getting the chance on the other side.
No, it's true. But whether or not that was the case, it did make me think, if I want to build on one project and get it out there in a bigger way, I should be consistent with the naming. And that's when I changed to CJ Bolland, my own name, basically, and started calling stuff CJ Bolland. And that did change everything, because then whatever I was doing was building on the same thing.
It's true, because Frank de Wolf had a big name pretty early on in Belgium. He was the first one that was really getting the big name, because he used his real name on the records. He did the B-sides records, which were really big in the house scene also in America, right? So the house DJs were playing his stuff pretty early. I think he was the first Belgian producer that was recognized in the States.
For sure. Yeah, know? He was massive.
And because he was using his real name on the records from the start also.
That's
so,
never occurred to me.
I mean, it was the same thing with Joey once he did Energy Flash and he did the records on R&S, because before that he never used his real name on the records. He had like Technical Onslaught, Direct, you know. Yeah. And that was kind of the game changer probably for you when you started putting out these records.
Absolutely. That changed a lot.
And then Marcos with Vamp, I mean, that was his first record on R&S, and I mean, that record was hitting when it came out. It was just, everybody knew this name. And Outlander is a really good name. It's definitely a catchy name, perfect name.
For sure.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't like the film. I thought it was too commercial. I really liked the other tracks.
Yeah, it was rubbish. Why did you even release it?
And I said, let's put it on the A side. It sounds the most commercial one.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I like the B side of Vamp, the Eastern track, this deep track. It goes well with the He Chilled Out. I mean, and then he did some of the first really early industrial tracks, because on the B side of Vamp, it's got these very industrial sounding tracks.
Yeah, and all the TZ stuff.
All the TZ stuff. I love the TZ stuff too. Yeah,
all right, that's the first half.
Will you stop talking yourself down, Marcus?
Yeah.
But let me ask you, I'm blaming you for the fast speed, because you're the one that started it.
I didn't do it.
You did do it. What was that Dominator remix? It was 148 beats per minute, right?
I think something went wrong with the drum machine or something. Or the tape was
spite of that, we were at like 130, and you changed the whole game with that. The whole sound. When you did that record by 1992, everything was 140 plus. And then when you did the
I swear to God, there's no philosophy behind it. I just want I'm bored with that. Let me speed up a bit.
To get it just quickly.
Yeah.
But did you think somebody was going to play it when you do
record this tape? I'll just speed it up a bit. Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember if the Mentasm remix, the Dominator remix was before or after the release of my album, The Fourth Sign. I think it might have been before. It was before.
It was the first record. I right. You remember
because I know I have a fast track on the Fourth Sign, which was way like what. For then, I mean now,
it was like 150
Gabba and whatever. It's a joke, but then it was like really, really fast. And what the hell's going on there? But in that tune, it really made sense. It's just the way I felt it bouncing around. I just felt it really made sense. And the Dominator remix, I don't know what I was thinking, to be honest. It was just like I think I just wanted it.
Yeah. I mean, there was nothing else to mix with it at that time. There was nothing else at that tempo. Everything was 130 or 128, maybe even a little bit slower.
Even if you sped up the Technics to like plus 16, you still couldn't get there. Yeah.
I clearly remember listening to it in the shop and going, "What? This is insane. This is like really fast." Right. But as music styles change, which if you weren't around back then, the music styles were changing so rapidly. If you remember, it was like in 1990, it was the bass and bleeps, it was the Belgian sound, and within months, then the rave sound became the big thing. And then by 92, the music was already 140, 150. Now it's distorting drum machines, 909, this whole Rotterdam Speedy J sound that Richie and them.
Yeah, the Dutch didn't do too much for the speed of the tracks either. They sped it up quite a bit, didn't they? And they're still going. I played at a Gabba festival not so long ago, and they booked me as a techno DJ because it's the guys from Multigroove. I don't know if you know this organization that do good techno festivals, but they also do big Gabba festivals. And they keep booking me, and they put me in a slot on one of the 10 stages, all stages of Gabba. nothing. It's all the
So for them, it was an ambient set.
and they put me in between, and then like you should see the crowd dissipate, and it's just the guys from the organization have a little boogie to some techno, and I'm like, well, thanks lads for booking me, but what the hell is going on here? I mean, Gabba, when it first came out, it was like 180, 190. We were like, Jesus, this is insane. But these guys are playing 300 BPMs. What is that all? I mean, how is that even? What? How does it even make a difference which tune you put in? I mean, we hear that about techno sometimes. It all sounds the same. But trust me, at 300 BPM with a distorted kick, it really does all sound the same.
I mean, in '93, I was going about 165 at one point with this hard acid techno stuff.
Ambient, that's not Gabba.
No, I know. I played a set like this at Mayday, and they didn't really go over very well because they were all playing Gabba, right? It was too mental, too mindfuck for them. You know, that was that time period. So, what was your experiences in 1992 when Aphex came out on R&S? What did you think of that? Because that was like a whole different thing. That just changed the game in a way.
Again, as I remember it, and I'm pretty sure this is how it went, I was in London with Cisco. I was at a gig. I think we played Lost or somewhere at the Box or whatever. And somebody handed me a white label. And it was Didgeridoo, Aphex Twin, just a white label. And I think it had a phone number written on it, and just his name.
Rabbit City Records.
Yes,
that's the one that I got before. That's one.
Well, there you go. And I remember coming home and thinking, "What the fuck is this? This is what is that?
Is that the right speed?
Is it hit? And I played it to Renard, and shortly after that, he was signed to. Whether or not I have anything to do with it, but I'm pretty sure I played in that record first, and he went, Jesus, what is that? Like we all did when you first heard that. Mastered from a cassette tape.
Yeah.
What is that all about?
And it's crazy with that is that the story to tell. I had the white label, came in the shop, I ordered like one or two, and I'm like, this is the weirdest fucking record, but it's super cool. And I took it home, and I listened to it many times, not knowing what it was. Never saw the first Analog Bubble Bath Volume 1. I didn't see that till after the R&S release came out. And then there was word going around that R&S, it was going through the Wasp Music Distribution, Harry that worked there, that was doing the buying there. And then I think Damon Wild said, yeah, R&S is signing this guy. He's supposed to be like the Jimi Hendrix of techno. And I got handed the record at the distributor when it came out a few months later, like 2-3 months later. And I was dying to hear it. And then when I put it on, it was Didgeridoo. And I'm like, oh shit, this is this. But there was the extra tracks, which were also mind-blowing. And yeah, I would say whoever came up with that term was kind of right, because I never heard anything like that prior to that. I think Richard just did something.
There were several milestones like that in my life when Dave Angel it was Dave Angel that handed me Sonic EP from Underground Resistance. When I first day I met Dave Angel, and he come to the studio, we're hanging out, we go for something to eat, we're going to hang out in the studio. What are we doing? Who are we? Who are you? What do you do? Blah, blah, blah. And obviously exchanging records, listening. Yeah, check this out. Oh, I come from that. Oh, that's a bit weird. That's fucking good. Oh, I love that. I'd like this, like that. And he played me Sonic EP. And I thought the first time I heard the track Elimination and Orby on YouTube, which I just went, how does this even exist? Who are these guys? What have I been doing? This is what? This is it. And I had the exact same feeling with Didgeridoo. And then the B-side, who can remember the titles? Dodi, Hexicaditsu, Ron, or whatever it's called. You hear that for the first time and you just go.
But you're talking about Sonic EP. Were you not into the bass and bleeps thing? Because the Sonic EP was very based on the show.
No, the bass and bleeps thing was quite slow and quite, and it was funky and was all right. There's a couple of tricky disco stuff like that. There was definitely good tunes in there. But it didn't grasp me in any particular way. It all sounded a bit like, it wasn't too far from where we'd already come from with Newbeat. It seemed like it was like the logical next step. But that wasn't. That came straight out of, I don't know where it came from. That was like, what the hell is this? Come on, who are these guys? This is just not normal.
Yeah, no, I remember when I heard it with the heavy bass line. Right. My brother got a copy of it. He brought it back to New York. We didn't even get the record from the distributor yet. He got it in England. and he was there playing, and somebody gave him somebody gave it to him in a shop or something, and he came back and he's like, we need to find where this record comes from because like we had no connection.
It just said Sonic EP, nothing else.
But he was like, this is an American record, and I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to find this. But that was a classic.
Excuse me for a second, but
was there a warehouse scene of parties here in Belgium in the 90s? Like, did they do a lot of illegal parties?
The thing was, it was hard to do anything illegal because they kind of allowed us to do most of the things
they
here.
were closing times anyway.
It was all kind of okay here. It was like, just get on with it. For a while, it didn't stay like that, but for a while it was just get on with it. And I was starting to play the UK scene, and in the UK scene there was a lot of illegal stuff because nothing was allowed. It was totally overregulated, a bit like America. And you couldn't do anything. It was just like, that's where the rave signal tower came from. It was just like some illegal rave somewhere. You didn't know how to get there until you got the rave signal. Somebody would tell you, call that number, follow the ice cream truck, and then you'll get there. You know what I mean? It was just, that was it.
Yeah, that's how it was in New York when we would.
Well, exactly. That didn't really happen in Belgium. It was always like, just let the kids.
So everything was in clubs, or there were warehouse parties that were like technically like they weren't illegal.
We had a lot of big clubs, so there was really no need. There wasn't that gap that needed to be filled as much. Because we had big, massive clubs like Boccaccio, Rocca, Illusion, Cherry Moon.
Out on Thursday, and then
It literally, you went out on Thursday afternoon and you came home Tuesday afternoon.
Was there such thing as a festival back then for techno?
Not so much. No, not really.
When did that first start popping up here?
I think that was early 90s, probably. When it started, I mean, we didn't call them festivals, we called them raves, but it was pretty much what you could call a festival. It started with a couple of thousand, and after a while it was tens of thousands, and then like now, they're the biggest. Yeah. They're bigger than, Tomorrowland's bigger than anything else.
10 days of techno, it started there, maybe.
That's all. Well, I can't remember the years exactly what exactly happened, but no, at first it was very much a club thing. And eventually these things started to happen. But they were never illegal here. That was the thing. It was always, okay, you can do it. Yeah. And license for any kind of thing were always pretty easy.
And were the records that you were doing at this time, like with Vamp and or Horsepower, were these records like on the pop charts here? Like, did they break into the Belgian charts on a higher level?
No.
UK, yes.
That started in the UK. I think I had my first chart in the UK. It wasn't Horsepower. I can't remember what it was, but I think, that would have been 94, 95-ish when that started happening with like maybe Camargue, I think might have charted in 93 maybe, but definitely not here. Later, it all became like a big deal, but right then, nobody gave a fuck. Nobody gave a shit. It was underground. It was our thing. Radios weren't playing this. It was like 2 or 3 radio shows, an hour or 2 a week that were playing that style of music, and everything else was just pop music and Top of the Pops and whatever we had here, pop, whatever it was called back then, were just like pop music shows. They didn't care about us, but we loved that. That was we didn't expect that. That was like, we were doing our thing, that's your thing, whatever.
Well, if you end up in the charts, then you were commercial. That was not.
Yeah, that was actually contra. Like, it was like, we're not what. How could we possibly?
We're heading in the wrong.
I think the first one that ended up in the charts was Human Resource Dominator. That was probably one of the first ones that ended up in the charts because it was underground in a sense, but so massively received that it just
And T99 Anastasia wasn't up there in that.
No. It didn't chart in any way though.
It's just the vocals there.
Dominator had vocals, so it's more catchy.
But radio and ignored us. And what did we have? The underground radio pirate stations that were doing a couple of hours a week.
And the program.
And then the beginning of MTV that had like parties on a Saturday night for a couple of hours that we might have got some attention, but not much.
Yeah, were there videos to any of your tracks back then? In America, we didn't see videos. We didn't have really techno videos.
Sometimes. We didn't either. We didn't. Who was going to pay for that? That didn't happen.
Oh no, I thought there was definitely videos of some of the stuff back in it.
I mean, eventually, but not from the start. That was like, and if there were videos, like from the New Beat era, there were a couple of videos, but they were like, well, probably absolutely awful, to be honest. Like, it's
Indeed.
terrible. Because it cost a fortune.
Yeah.
There was hardly any special effects.
Yeah.
And it was all about how much film work and how much, and who's going to pay for that. So that didn't tend to happen. My first video was Camargue, and it was horrible. It's just a terrible video.
Oh yeah, that was a big track.
But the video was terrible. It was just like, I
never saw it.
And I was literally like, Renan, give me. I'm sorry about your t-shirt, but give me a video. Like, we gotta do something. Well, then we need a couple of remixes. I thought, we'll do. So I did all the remixes myself. I did like 5 remixes of it. Something I did one with my then 15-year-old sister that sang a 1-line lyric. Always
Is that the biggest
sunshine
record that you did on in your techno years? Is that
Camargue?
Yeah.
For R&S, probably yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I never realized it was that big because I'm in the States.
But it wasn't that big then. It wasn't. It's become bigger now than it was then. It never really was that big.
But this was in the period of like Jam and Spoon and the Age of Love and all this stuff. So the sound was getting really commercial.
But that was big. That's a whole different category of big. That's a couple of years later, and there was bigger and more open doors to that kind of music then, and also that was a more relatable track. It was more, well, it was a broader track, to be honest. I mean, it was very good, but it was easier for a big public than Camargue was. Camargue was kind of fast.
You had the love for it also getting bigger and bigger. And
it's all grew over the years, but when Camargue first came out, Camargue was actually made in 91. When that first came out, it was just...
Oh, you made that in 91? I thought that was 93, that track.
No. It came out in 91 as a 12, and it came out in 92 on the Fourth Sign. So it was 2 years before that. And that was just literally right after the new beat. So it was too fast, the beat wasn't straightforward to the floor. It was like bouncing all over the place. I mean, when we listen back to it now, you think, what's the problem?
But Fourth Side came out in 92?
Yeah, 92.
Memory.
He hasn't got one. Me neither, by the way.
Yeah.
So getting into the mid 90s, you kind of left R&S, right? And then you did the Sugar Sweet on the FFR.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just fell off the scene. Why was that? You just kind of...
Well, that's political stuff, which we won't delve into too deeply. But I did I left R&S, assigned to a small-ish label, Internal Records, which was mothershipped by FFRR, who were also mothershipped by Universal, which was then even still called Polygram, I think. So I was on a label that had a big overseeing and another even bigger overseeing that were financing all that stuff. And there was 2 guys running Internal Records, Ben and Christian. And they signed me, they signed Orbital, they signed Cisco Ferreira, Drum Club, and maybe 1 or 2 other bands that I vaguely remember.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that first album. And we literally accidentally had 2 hits on it. There was Sugar Sweet, which was, we had a US Billboard #1 dance charts with the Armand van Helden remix with. I was expecting that. I'd just come off R&S Records, just come from newbie into some weird techno, and suddenly we're getting phone calls. Hey, this is CJ. Yeah, this is Chris from Universal or USA. Congratulations on your verse #1. I'm like, what? And then suddenly this big hamper basket arrives with lots of jams and spreads and stuff.
Admittedly, we were disappointed because you wanted a techno record from you.
I didn't. I mean, that was an Armand Helmets. Thanks, Armand. Nice one. Bought me a house. I didn't know what was happening. It just does that. And this is the thing, because I was already getting a little bit bored, to be honest, Adam, with techno was already beginning to get more loopy, and I couldn't get into the loopy stuff. I always wanted some little bit of a story in it, and I was playing a lot in the UK, and I was picking up on the jungle vibes and the break beats and the stuff that was happening. I was hanging out with Liam from Prodigy with me, hearing stuff like that, and I was like, it was just, my music was changing. Whether I wanted to or not, I was transitioning to whatever, just picking up all these influences, just literally because it was exciting. and I made a very, very breakbeaty album, which was, by that time I'd already had not hits but underground accepted tunes that were like played a lot, and I sort of felt like, well, I'm going to do this album, and it's like there's no techno on it. So I last minute made 2 techno tracks for it, a track called Counterpoint and then The Prophet, which was, I think we made it in an afternoon, and it was just like, just happened to watch the movie Last Temptation of Christ, and saw Willem Dafoe do his Jesus speech to the Jews about blah blah blah, and he sort of crescendoed. I thought, oh, that's kind of exciting. What if we put a big fucking snare roll to that? That could be something. And I thought it was the cheesiest thing I ever did, but it's been haunting me for the last 30 years, that bloody tune. I wish I'd done it sometimes.
It's fucking haunting.
Did you feel limited as an artist to what you could do when you were working at R&S in the later years that you worked with them? Did you feel like you couldn't do what you wanted to do and get out, like constrictions and?
No, not so much. But Renat was at that exact moment in time also transitioning a bit towards jungle and drum and bass.
Yeah, well.
And he was more involved with that, and I just felt like, well, it's time to move on, we'll do something else.
Yeah.
And it was mainly Cisco Ferreira that was kept saying, Siege, come over here, man, it's all happening over here. And what happened was, and this is why I'm telling you the story, Ben and Christian, who were running the internal label, 2 great guys, but were basically working for a monthly wage, and got a better offer somewhere else, and moved and did something else. And suddenly nobody was running the label, and the mothership went, shall we look for somebody else? No, we'll just dissolve the label. And Cisco, sorry, you're too underground. You Drum Club, that's too underground. Orbital, you guys are good. Suck up to the mothership. Siege, we just had a fucking #1. Suck up to the mothership. So suddenly I was signed to FFRR directly, pretty much reporting to Pete Tong. And nice guy, but not entirely involved in the style of music that I was doing. And I wrote him a second album, and he said, Siege, it's great, but where's the top 10 hit? And I went, I don't know what that even means. How do you do that? It's not even, I mean, how would I even start to try and write? I mean, whatever happened just happened. I had no control over that. I'm not trying to make pop music. I'm trying to make good music, the way I like it. So he said, well, all right then, well, take more time, whatever you want to do. I'm signed strictly to them, so I'm held tightly under the contract, but I couldn't release anything. So he didn't want to release what I had because it was too underground, and to his mind, and I couldn't do it anywhere else. So I was stuck, and that lasted for about 2.5 years, and it almost ended my career, I would say. I almost just felt like giving up completely. And that's when I met Tom Barman, the rock guy from Deus. And we started chatting, and he said, look, you want to do something, a whole different project? And I went, right, whatever is going to happen, I'm going to get taken to court, I'm going to get sued or whatever. I'm doing something else anyway. It's a whole different thing. Let's just do it. I just want to keep making music. Just let me go with it. But in the meantime, my whole Bolland thing that had been going for the last decade just took a nosedive. Because it just
I guess we all thought you retired. We didn't know.
I didn't retire. I was stuck, and there was no Facebook or Instagram for me to report. Oh, this is happening to me. I couldn't cry about it. I could, but nobody knew. So I was just like,
and then Marcos,
dying a slow death.
when he went to FFR, you were still on R&S, and you stayed for quite a while. I mean, you were going into
I was working
later
in the
night.
office, but I was working in the office itself. Music-wise,
Why? Why did that happen? How did you end up in the office? Why did you stop writing music? I mean, I think that's a pertinent question.
that was Katrine with a nervous breakdown, and they needed a replacement, and I came there,
And you just said yes.
and I stayed there.
All right.
Yeah.
And were you ever doing any A&R, like ever bringing anything to Renat, like hearing records or artists? And
One record, my definition of house music from
DJ Help.
DJ Help.
A good one.
I was playing at the Love Parade, and after my gig, he came there with the white label and said, "Can you give this to Renat, please?" And I took it home, I gave it to him, and
And then also sound-wise, you were going also more into like breakbeat territory, house, just a little bit different than
Always
the mainstream
experimenting and
most of the time.
searching and doing, but yeah, I never had one straight direction to go. I'm curious.
And then by the late 90s, you just also kind of stopped, and then you came back around a little bit and was making some more deeper house stuff and different labels.
Yeah, I was together with a friend, and we were on another vibe. But my thing were always the live set. I loved that. Well, I didn't have the equipment, or I couldn't afford it until a Prodigy came up using the sample, and then with the royalties, I got the hardware, and I could go
It's
back.
good when people steal from you and you can get money from it. It always helps.
So in this whole time in the
Thanks
90s,
to them, I could go back live.
in this whole time in the 90s, when you were having this moment of where you went and started doing this rock stuff, were you DJing still for techno? You was playing
I
out?
was still DJing. I never really stopped DJing, but obviously the profile went down. And I was getting less bookings, but it was still, because in the middle of the 90s, it was so insane. I mean, I didn't feel it for a long while, because even though it was slowly diminishing, it came from too many to just about as many as I could handle. And it took a while into the early 2000s before me to notice, hang on, I haven't got a booking every weekend. What's going on? That's not usual. I mean, I'll be choosing out of 4 or 5 at least normally. And now I haven't got one this weekend. That never happened. And that's when I started really realizing, this doesn't last forever. You got to keep at this. But I was already so far distanced from it, because I mean, that stuff with Pete Tong really sort of like took the wind out of me a bit. It was like I was really stuck in a situation where no matter what I write, he's not going to. We did actually release one song where I totally tried to, how can I do it that he's going to like it, that it's going to be potentially poppy enough, but it's also something I can live with. I mean, that's the kind of boundaries I was working with, and that made no sense to me. I didn't want to be in that situation. I did one tune, and it's called It Ain't Gonna Be Me, which I actually felt good with. I'm quite happy with. And that's the only one we released off that second album. And then eventually he said, right, I'll release you from the contract. And then I just started doing, I was already intermixed with the new situation with Tom Barman, and we were already writing other complete other stuff. And also, as it happened, techno went very minimal then.
I was going to ask you, what were you playing at this time? In this mid-90s period, you had the two styles. You had the wonky techno, which was Neil Landstrom and Christian Vogel and the style. And then you had this kind of more drum code style of like the early Code Red and early drum codes, Harry Lackabush, Adam stuff.
But I would be mixing all of that stuff up, because whatever, I mean, I never pinned down to one of those styles. It was just whatever was like the tune of the moment. Harry Lackabush would definitely have been plenty of them.
Harry made some great records.
Well, exactly.
I mean, he's one of my
so he would have been plenty of those in my record box at the time, amongst many others. Obviously, yourself, Luke Slater, and whatever, a whole bunch of people, Dave Clark, all that stuff. Anything that was good at the time.
But then the late 90s came, and then things started to get very redundant in techno, if you remember. It was just like what was going on. It was in this more minimal stuff, like the Perlon records and Baby Ford, and this stuff started to creep up.
Yeah.
Mike Inc., Studio One, was any of this?
There was, yes and no. There was some very, very insanely good minimal, because there's nothing wrong with minimal if you know exactly what you're doing. But it's a very hard style to nail, because it's minimal. There's not much going on. Make sure every element is absolutely
at the
top of your game. And there's not many people capable of that. So obviously, a lot of it was...
Function once told me, he said, if you can let a loop play over and over for 2 hours, 3 hours, and it still sounds good, then you know that's the right...
Then you know.
I agree with that.
Absolutely. But there's not too many people capable of that. So as a style, it bored the shit out of me, to be honest. As a couple of tunes that I could pick out that were like, that makes sense. Can't name any names right now. It's too long ago, but the right ones that made sense, you're like, Jesus, that's an insanely good track. There's 3 sounds going on, and I can listen to this for 2 hours and it wouldn't bore me. It's just brilliant. that would happen. But as a genre in the club, after what we just went through for 10 years, I mean, you were a part of it. Like the energy that we had going on to go to that just made no sense to me.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And at the same time, and at the right time for me, was that new electro house, we called it then. There was many names. I don't know even
Electro Flash, like
well, just when it started getting, you had the cheesy poppy side of that as well, but you had the beginning of like just the more funky electro stuff that had techno roots, it had electro roots. It just sounded dancey and poppy, and it was nice and it was funky
And interesting.
and interesting. And well, yeah, and that is exactly what I got into then. And then, as it turned out, when I was working with Tom Barman, he was into that stuff as well, and we ended up doing DJ sets, and we started playing that stuff basically. And I sort of got stuck into that for about, I don't know how many years, couple of years, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, I mean, it was good records. I mean, I was doing the industrial techno thing, EBM thing at this point, but people like Fiximo Terrence was doing great EBM techno records. I don't know if you were paying attention to his.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that would also all be a part of it. It would all be mixed up again. It wouldn't just be one specific genre. We weren't playing electro, we weren't playing electro house, we weren't playing EBM. We were playing all this stuff together and mixing it all, whatever. But stuff that made sense, that was funky, that was fun to listen to again. And I found new excitement in that. Until later in the 2000s, when out of nowhere, techno suddenly got exciting again. It just all changed again, as it tends to do. It all came around. The software got better. People were getting better at the game. The music got more interesting again, and I started getting excited again. I got really into it again. And then I also started buying more music in that genre, and I started DJing more because I had more ammo. I had more ammunition to play with. Felt good about what I was playing.
There was definitely a redundant period between 2003 2009.
Yes,
in my opinion, right?
It was all our opinions, I think.
And then it's just. I remember going to Berkheim not in the beginning, but in this 2008-9 period with Ben Clark and Marcel Detman. Were you aware of like what they were doing at that point and what was going on there? Because it was a really unique period. This is like the renaissance of techno, 2009-10 in Berlin, and it really started there.
They brought it back.
And it was really amazing. This next period from like 2009 to like 2017-18, there was such good modern techno coming out, but a lot of industrial techno is just kind of the new sound in that period, but also straight techno as well. And it was just the production and the artists that were doing it, especially in the first 4 or 5 years, because it wasn't so everybody, you could follow all the artists that were in the scene at that point. Were you paying attention to this a lot at that period?
Not like full on focused, but it was definitely there. I was definitely aware of it, and I was following it. I was in the midst of a whole different thing. I was also I spent a lot of time doing productions for Tom Barman's rock band Days, because that was a big deal here, and because we'd done the work with Magnus as a band, I got involved in that, and that took up a lot of time as well, and I really got into it. I kind of enjoyed that work as well. Just it's a whole new experience. I ended up working with a lot of top world producers. Well, I ended up working with David Bottrell and amongst others, he produces Tool and stuff like that. And learned a lot and had whole different experiences. So I wasn't like I was in the 90s, full on Mr. Techno, but it was never too far away from my radar. I was always like keeping a scope on it. But it wasn't until the midst of 2000, well, the midst of the teens, basically 14, 15, when I really went, it's getting so good now. I'm gonna totally shift my attention totally back to this, and this is getting my prior attention. That's when I really felt like this is something I want to do again. And I literally packed in all the other jobs. I just said, look, we'll finish this album, we'll do that one, but when that's all done, I'm moving the studio, I'm taking all my gear out, and I'm building a new one where we are now, and I'm gonna start doing techno again. And took me some time to get back into the production of it, because it had been a while and it's a whole different approach, and to get things the way I wanted them.
I mean, you said in Berkheim when I came in 2019 was fucking sick. It was great.
Oh, well, there you go.
I was like, I was a little skeptical. Like, this guy's been off the scene in a while. And what the hell he's going to play? I was like, wow, he just
over there somewhere. I was never that far away. But I know. I'm as you know, that's our generation, I suppose. I'm not a social media man at all. I'm pretty much an anti-social media man. I never post jack shit. Everybody tags me or whatever, and that's how my Facebook lives. I don't even do Instagram or TikTok, and everybody and I'll go, you old fart, whatever. Fair enough, but it bores the fucking tits off me, which would be good because I could do with losing them. But it's just I can't be asked. Honestly, I can't do it.
So Marcos, you not being a DJ, and you said something interesting when we were talking last night when we listened to your tracks in the studio, that you don't really tend to listen to a lot of music because you don't want to be influenced by it. But yet, like, be influenced by other stuff, you want to make stuff that's original out of your own head. But yet, when I'm listening to your music, it sounds very modern and very up to date. So I would have to think that you kind of have to be listening to something because the music you're still cutting edge after all these years. You're not resting on the past in your music so much.
Oh no, I catch the vibes and tendencies, but at home I hardly listen to music.
But you go out a lot still?
Well, no, not even. No.
Because I know we went out the one night, but
I've seen you go out.
Yeah.
Well, not every week.
Not every week, no.
Sonic Room Podcast.